Last Thursday, I was at a drive-thru picking up a $10 meal. Just a burger, fries, and a drink. Nothing crazy. And when I looked at the receipt, there it was. Tax, 83 cents, on a $10 lunch. Cool. No big deal, right? But then I got home, opened my laptop, and I read something that genuinely made me put that burger down mid-bite. In 2007, Jeff Bezos, the guy who owns the company that probably delivered your last 3 impulse purchases, reported $0 in federal income tax. Not low taxes, not reduced taxes. 0. And in that same year, a firefighter in Ohio making $60,000 paid over $9,000 in federal income tax. $9,000 from the firefighter. 0 from the guy who could literally buy the entire city of Ohio if cities were for sale. And you know what the craziest part is? Both of them followed the law. Perfectly. Every rule, every regulation, everything by the book. The firefighter didn't overpay. Bezos didn't cheat. They just played 2 completely different games with 2 completely different rule books. And that right there is what we need to talk about. Now, before we get into this, let me be real with you. If you clicked on this video thinking I'm about to hand you some magic loophole that's going to erase your tax bill next April, I'm not. That's not what this is. And honestly, if someone on the internet is promising you that, run. What I'm going to do is pull back the curtain on how the wealthiest people in this country have legally, strategically, and very quietly built a system where they keep almost everything, while you and I hand over a quarter of our paychecks before we even see them. And this isn't some conspiracy rant. This is not about hating rich people. This is about understanding the architecture of money in America. Because once you see how it actually works, you can't unsee it. And some of these strategies, on a smaller scale, you can actually start using yourself. Not all of them, but some. And that difference matters. None of this is investment advice, by the way. This is a wide-angle look at how the system operates. That's it. My name's Blake, and if you're the kind of person who'd rather understand how money actually moves instead of just grinding and hoping for the best, you're going to want to stick around for this one. Hit subscribe right now, because what I break down on this channel isn't the stuff they teach you in school. It's the stuff they probably should have. All right? So let's start with the most important thing nobody ever explains clearly. There's a massive difference between income and wealth. And if you don't understand that difference, nothing else about the tax system will ever make sense to you. Here's what I mean. When you go to work, you earn a salary. That salary is income, and the government taxes it immediately. Like, before your paycheck even hits your bank account, they've already taken their cut. You don't get a say, you don't get to delay it. It just happens. That's the W-2 life. Now think about someone like Elon Musk. In certain years, his net worth jumped by 10, 15, even $30 billion. But here's the thing. That wasn't income. That was his Tesla stock going up in value. He didn't sell anything. No money hit his bank account. On paper, he got astronomically richer. But in the eyes of the IRS, nothing happened. No sale, no tax. That's the rule. You only pay capital gains tax when you sell. And on the surface, that rule sounds fair. Like, imagine your house doubled in value overnight. You'd be pretty upset if the government sent you a tax bill the next morning, right? You didn't sell the house. You didn't make any cash. Why should you owe anything? That's the exact same argument that protects billionaires. The only difference is your house went from $300,000 to $600,000. Their stock went from $2 billion to $14 billion. Same rule, very different outcome. And here's where it gets really interesting. You eventually need to sell your house or tap into your retirement to live. They don't, because they figured out something most people never will. You don't need to sell assets to spend money. You just need to borrow against them. This is the strategy. 3 words: buy, borrow, die. And once you understand it, you'll see it everywhere. Step 1, buy, or more accurately, accumulate. The ultra-wealthy build up massive positions in stocks, real estate, businesses, private equity. These assets grow in value year after year, sometimes explosively. But they never sell. As long as they hold, they owe nothing in taxes. The top 1% in America owns more stock market wealth than the bottom 90% combined. Let that land for a second. more than 90% of the country combined. Step 2. Borrow. This is the part that broke my brain when I first learned about it. Instead of selling their stocks and paying 20% capital gains tax, they walk into a bank, put those stocks up as collateral, and take out a loan. A massive low-interest loan. We're talking rates like 1.5%, maybe 2%. And here's the key. Loans are not income. You borrowed money, you didn't earn it. So there's no tax. None. Zero. Let me make this real for you. Let's say you make $100,000 a year. After federal and state taxes, you probably take home somewhere around $72,000. You worked all year for that. Now, imagine a billionaire wants $100 million to buy a yacht, a house, whatever. He calls his banker at Goldman Sachs, pledges $200 million in Amazon stock as collateral, and gets a $100 million loan at 1.5% interest. His annual interest cost is $1.5 million. Your tax bill on your $100,000 is almost $30,000. He just accessed $100 million and paid nothing in taxes. You accessed $100,000 and paid 30% to the government. Same country, same tax code. Very different experience. It's like having an unlimited credit card where the limit is your net worth, the interest rate is basically nothing, and the IRS can't touch any of it. Step 3. Die. And I know that sounds dark, but stay with me because this is the part that really seals the deal. There's a rule in the tax code called stepped-up basis. When someone dies, their assets pass to their heirs, and the cost basis of those assets resets to the current market value. So let's say a billionaire bought stock decades ago for $1 million. Over their lifetime, it grows to $1 billion. They never sold it, so they never paid taxes on that gain. When they die, their kids inherit that stock, and the new cost basis is $1 billion, not the original million. If the kids sell it for $1 billion, their capital gain is zero. All those decades of growth, hundreds of millions or even billions in gains, completely tax-free. Gone. Erased. The Congressional Budget Office estimates this loophole alone costs the government around $40 to $50 billion every single year. Death became the ultimate tax shelter. And for the ultra-wealthy, it might be the best financial move they ever make. Now, if buy, borrow, die was the whole story, that would already be insane enough. But it's not. There's a whole additional toolkit that the ultra-wealthy use, and it's worth understanding because each piece builds on the last. Real estate is a big one. You buy a $50 million building. On paper, the IRS lets you deduct depreciation on that building over about 27.5 years, as if the building is losing value. But in reality, that building might be appreciating, going up in value every single year. So you're deducting losses that don't actually exist. And when you finally sell, you use something called a 1031 exchange to roll the profits into another property and defer the capital gains tax all over again. You can do this over and over and over your entire life. Jared Kushner and his family reportedly used this strategy to pay almost nothing in federal income tax for years. Then there's charitable giving, which sounds wholesome until you look at how it actually works at the top. A billionaire buys stock for $10 million. It grows to $100 million. Instead of selling it and paying capital gains tax on the $90 million in profit, they donate it to a donor-advised fund. They get a tax deduction for the full $100 million market value. They never pay a dime in capital gains. And here's the kicker. The money can sit in that fund for years, sometimes decades, before it actually goes to any charity. Philanthropy became a tax strategy. You get the deduction today for money that might help someone, eventually. Maybe. Wall Street has its own version too. It's called carried interest. Fund managers at hedge funds and private equity firms earn what is essentially a paycheck for managing other people's money. But instead of paying the top income tax rate of 37%, like everyone else who works for a living, they pay the capital gains rate of 20%. This costs the government an estimated $14 billion over 10 years. And every time Congress talks about closing it, somehow it survives. And then there are trusts, GRATs, IDGTs, SLATs, CRTs. It's an entire alphabet of legal structures designed to move wealth between generations while minimizing or eliminating estate and gift taxes. Sheldon Adelson reportedly transferred an estimated $7.9 billion to his heirs using these structures, paying virtually nothing in taxes. Billion, with a B. So the obvious question is, why can't you and I just do all of this? And the honest answer is, the game wasn't designed for us. These strategies require scale. Securities-backed loans typically require portfolios starting at $1 million minimum, and most require 5 to 10 million. The tax attorneys and wealth advisors who set this up charge $500 to $1,500 an hour. Annual planning can cost $50,000 to $500,000. You and I use TurboTax for $80. But the biggest barrier isn't even money, it's structure. If your income comes from a W-2, the tax is taken out before you ever see it. You don't get to choose, you don't get to defer, you don't get to borrow against it. The system was built to collect from you automatically and efficiently. For billionaires, collection is optional, negotiable, and deferrable, indefinitely. It's like there are two versions of the tax code. The version you see is 70,000 pages of chaos. The version billionaires use is the same 70,000 pages, but they've got a team of 30 people finding the 47 pages that actually matter. Now, some people will say this is fine because the wealthy create jobs and drive innovation. And look, there's truth in the idea that capital drives growth. But the 735 billionaires in America now hold more wealth than the bottom 50% combined. That's more than 165 million people. And historically, when wealth concentration hits these levels, economic mobility doesn't go up. It goes down. We're back at Gilded Age levels of inequality, the 1890s. That's where we are. Other people say, well, if you tax them more, they'll just leave. The data doesn't support that. Fewer than 0.06% of Americans renounce citizenship in any given year. And the U.S. is one of the few countries that taxes its citizens on worldwide income and charges an exit tax if you try to leave. These people aren't going anywhere. Their money, their businesses, their networks, their lives are here. And then there's my favorite argument. It's legal, so what's the problem? And to that, I'd say, who do you think writes these laws? The financial and real estate industries spent over $1.2 billion on lobbying in a single year. When you can afford to influence the rules, legality becomes a very flexible concept. The IRS estimates the tax gap. The difference between what's owed and what's actually collected is somewhere between $600 and $700 billion a year. Meanwhile, the IRS has fewer employees today than it did in 1970, despite the population nearly doubling. We don't have a spending problem, we have a collection problem, and the people we're failing to collect from are the ones who can most afford to pay. So where does that leave you? Look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you the system is going to change overnight. It probably won't. But there are things you can do right now within the system that exists. Max out your retirement accounts. A 401k and a Roth IRA are basically the middle-class version of tax deferral. They're not as powerful as what billionaires use, but they're the same concept, just at a smaller scale. Learn the difference between ordinary income and long-term capital gains. Invest in assets you can hold for over a year, and your tax rate drops significantly. If you have access to an HSA, use it. It's triple tax advantaged, and most people completely ignore it. And if real estate is on your radar, some of those same depreciation strategies work at a smaller scale too. You can't play the same game as billionaires, but you can at least stop playing blindfolded. The tax code is over 70,000 pages long. It wasn't written for you to understand. It was written for the people who could afford to help write it. And the first step to changing any game is understanding how it's being played. I'm Blake, and I'll see you in the next one.